بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. So tonight inshallah we're going to continue with the next chapter. The next chapter the Shaykh mentions the chapter of wiping on the khuffain and other things that one can wipe on. So the Shaykh says فإن كان عليه خفان ونحوهما مسح عليهما. So the Shaykh says if a person is wearing khuffain, so leather socks, and similar to that, he can wipe on the leather socks if he wants to. The duration of 1 day and 1 night if he's a resident, and the duration of 3 days and 3 nights if he's a traveler. But the stipulation is that he wears these leather socks while in the state of tahara, and that he can only wipe on them وَلَا يَمْسَحُهُمَا إِلَّا فِي الْحَدَثِ الْأَصْغَرِ, and that he only wipes on it in the minor impurity, not in the hadathun akbar, where one is in a state where one needs to perform the ghusl. So that's the translation. So let's break it down. So the Shaykh says if a person is wearing a khuf, so a khuf is what is worn on the foot, generally made from skin, so like leather socks. وَنَحْوُهُمَا, and similar to it. So the Shaykh is referring to a thing, but I'm going to expand it a bit. And similar to the khuf in the sense that it is similar to the khuf itself, or similar to the khuf in the sense that it is similar to the khuf in the sense that a khuf can be wiped over. So the person is wearing something similar to the khuf, and this thing can be wiped over. Okay, so these things that are similar to the khuf in the sense that they can be wiped over, generally four things. So that is what is worn on the feet, which is khuffain. Also, like a cast or plaster, a jabira, it's going to come, the Shaykh is going to mention it. And then generally the Hanbali fuqaha include two other things which the Shaykh has not mentioned. Maybe I'll mention them if there's a bit of time at the end. And that is the imama, the turban that is worn on the head for a male. A male can wipe on it, and a khimar, so a scarf or headgear for a female. So those are four things that can be wiped over. And most of the stipulations that we're going to mention for the khuf will apply to the other three, things as well. That's why we can kind of expand what the Shaykh says similar to the khuf in the sense that something else that can be wiped on. So that's one aspect, okay? And the second aspect, similar to the khuf in the sense that it is similar to the khuf in that it is worn on the foot like a khuf. It is worn on the foot like a khuf. So we said the khuf is like a leather sock. So if we look at the word khuf that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wiped over, Imam Ahmad rahmatullahi alayhi, he says that I have no doubt in my heart regarding the aspect of wiping on the khuf. There's over 40 ahadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam regarding wiping over the khuf. So wiping over the khuf, before we mention a few masail, let's discuss it as well. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wiped over the khuf, and we said similar to the khuf. So similar to the khuf are those things worn on the foot. So the fuqaha have stipulations for what is a khuf that can be wiped over. And based on that, anything else that connects, that falls into these stipulations, a person can wipe over it. And we do expand it because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the concession, the rukhsa of wiping came for wiping on the khuf. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wiped also on his sandals when they were with the khuf. So he expanded the meaning of what can be wiped over. Therefore, we say anything that is worn on the foot that has the stipulations of a khuf, that we're going to mention, that can be wiped over. So when it comes to the khuf, the fuqaha say that the wiping on the khuf is a rukhsa. It is a concession from Allah Azza wa Jal. That is for the khuf and also for the imama and also for the khimar. It is a concession from Allah Azza wa Jal. As for a jabira is basically like a cast or plaster, something like that you'd wear over a broken bone or a wound. We're going to call it a jabira in the dars. Okay, that's how it's made. That's the Arabic term for it that's used in the books of fiqh. So on a jabira, that is not a rukhsa, that is an azima. So a rukhsa is a concession. This is a translation of a rukhsa. There's a technical definition of a rukhsa. But me pointing this leads us to a mas'ala, I'll mention it just now. And that is that the wiping on the khuf is a rukhsa. It's a concession from Allah Azza wa Jal. Wiping on the jabira, while it has the aspect of a concession of ease from Allah, that you have a wound, you don't need to wash the wound, or you have a plaster on it to help it heal, that you don't need to remove the plaster. It has the aspect of a concession from that side, but it also has another aspect to it, which is why we call it an azima. Azima is generally the opposite of a rukhsa, but I want to come to a mas'ala and connect fiqh, basically. That's what I want to do, by connecting fiqh. When we mentioned something just now, so it's important to know rukhsa and the opposite of a rukhsa and where it ties up, So it's going to come just now. So the fuqaha say that wiping on the khuf is better than washing the feet. Because it is a rukhsa, and again this is another connecting to why I mentioned it is a rukhsa, and that is Allah Azza wa Jal, as comes in some of the ahadith, loves when a person takes advantage of the concessions Allah gives. In the same way that Allah loves a person stops at the boundaries of Allah, when Allah gives leeway, Allah loves that a person then takes it. And also it is better to wipe on the khuf because it is also showing opposition to some of the sects of Ahlul Bid'ah who do not wipe on the khuf, who do not deem wiping on the khuf to be something from Islam. Hence many of the ulama of Aqeedah mention the aspect of wiping on the khuf, the socks, in the books of Aqeedah, So from that angle, wiping on the khuf is better than washing the feet. But the fuqaha say that it is, even though it is better to wipe on the feet, to wipe over the feet, meaning the thing you are wearing on the foot, it is not sunnah to wear footgear to wipe over it. So they say that the best thing to do, essentially the best thing to do, is the state of your feet. If you are wearing footgear that you can wipe over, then that footgear, then it's better to wipe over and not to take off. And if you are not wearing anything, on your feet, then in that case washing would be better. Washing the feet would be better. So that's what the fuqaha say regarding that. Then the Shaykh says that the person masaha alayhima in sha'a. A person can wipe over his leather socks if he wants to. So that connects to the fuqaha in the books of fiqh. They say وَيَجُوزُ الْمَسْحُ عَلَى الْخُفَّيْنِ. They say it is jais, it is permissible to wipe over the leather socks. That their wording of jais doesn't necessarily mean it is not mustahab. Rather, we can take it from two angles. Number one, they are referring to a hukum wad'i. You have two types of rules, hukum taklifi, hukum wad'i. In the intro of this book, when we mentioned the rule of we mentioned the definition of wajib and mustahab and mubah, all of etc. All of that is called hukum taklifi. Hukum wad'i is regarding when we say something is valid or invalid, or we say something is a shart or something is a sabab. Things like that are called hukum wad'i. The explanation of that is the books of usul. But in saying that, we say insha. So the Shaykh is saying that when the fuqaha say yajuz, they mean it is correct, it is sahih, it is valid to wipe over the sock. Wiping over the sock then can become wajib or mustahab, or it can take different rules. So the fuqaha say, for example, if a person doesn't have enough water to wash his feet before he starts wudu, and he's wearing something, and it's permissible for him to wipe over the socks. He's in that state. He's in the state where it's permissible for him to wipe over. But he doesn't have enough water. If he were to take his socks off to wash his feet, he doesn't have enough water. So they say here it will be wajib to wash the feet. So it will to wipe the feet. It will be wajib here to do mash of the khuffayn, or the footgear. And then also, if a person, the time of salah is almost out, and if he washes his feet, then the time of salah will go out. And if he wipes over his feet, because he's in the situation where he can wipe over his feet, he fulfills the stipulations, then in that case it will be wajib upon him to wipe over his feet. And they mention few situations where it is wajib or or it is mustahab. So that will be regarding when the Shaykh says insha. So meaning it's not wajib to wipe over the feet, as we mentioned, and we mentioned what else is connected to the fuqaha when they say yajuz, and the Shaykh indicated to it when he says insha. Then he says yawman wa layla lil muqim. Then he mentions the duration that a person is allowed to wipe over his footgear, and that is for a resident day and night. So 24 hours. Actually, most of the ulama and most of the mashayikh as well as the fuqaha in their books, the way they phrase the mas'ala, most of them indicates that they are referring to 24 hours. Indicates that they are referring to 24 hours. And also in some narrations that's mawquf on Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he said that a day, a yawm, which is a day and a night, is 24 hours with Allah Azza wa Jal. So that it has some basis of 24 hours as well in Sharia. That's one thing. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said of the day of Jumu'ah, it has 12 hours. It has 12 hours. So some of the fuqaha, the way they phrase it, in some of the hawashi, it may indicate that they say the timings with salah, with a salah. But most of the fuqaha, or the zahir of their kalam, will explain what I mean, or what the fuqaha mean when they say zahir kalam in another dars inshaAllah. So they referring to 24 hours. So that's what it would mean. Day and night meaning 24 hours. If you wiped on your leather socks at 3 p.m. or 3:17 p.m., you're allowed to wipe as a resident for 24 hours. Until the next day, 3:17 p.m., you have that time span. And if you are a traveler, then you are allowed to wipe over your footgear for 3 days and nights, so 72 hours. But the fuqaha say that if you are traveling with the intention to do a sin, you are traveling with the intention to do the sin, meaning, let's rephrase, you are traveling for a sin. Then in that case, you are not allowed to wipe over the footgear, and also with the other things that are rukhsa. This is where it ties up. So when we say you are traveling to commit a sin, is different for if you are traveling for a permissible thing but you commit sins in the journey or on the journey. So that means you are traveling to break family ties, or you are traveling to drink something haram, for example, or eat something haram. That is your intention of your travel is something haram. Compared to a person intending something permissible. He's intending to go for a vacation, something permissible. But then on the vacation, he does something haram. Right? He's doing things that are haram. This person can wipe over his feet for 3 days and nights. But the first person, he cannot. And that is because it's a rukhsa, it's a concession of Allah. So you cannot partake in a concession when you disobey Allah. That's why the qa'idah is al-muharram la yubih. Al-muharram la yubih. Something haram does not make something a concession permissible. Haram does not make a concession permissible. Just like how we mentioned for istijmar. For istijmar with something haram, it does not fulfill the istijmar, because istijmar is a rukhsa from Allah. That's the qa'idah. Here's the qa'idah. That's how it connects. In a different chapter, here it is as well. And we mentioned a jabira. A jabira is not a rukhsa. It's an azima. Therefore, a jabira, we're going to mention a bit later, but I can mention it now. We mentioned day and night for a resident and a traveler, 3 days and 3 nights. That was in summary. For a jabira, for a plaster or cast, etc., there's no time limit. Therefore, even if you are traveling, and even if you are traveling with the intention of sin, for the purpose of sin, you can wipe over it. Because it's not a rukhsa per se in the one sense. In the second sense I mentioned earlier. So that's one of the differences between a jabira and the other things you can wipe on, is that a jabira has no time. Because you are injured, you're wearing it until when? Until your injuries or your wound is healed. Therefore, when the time ends, what would be 1 day or 24 hours or 72 hours, for the other things you can wipe over. For a jabira, the time ending would be when your broken bone is healed, or your wound is healed, or your injury is healed, etc. That would be the difference between the two there. So we mentioned the starting point of the masih, of the wiping of the duration. So now the fuqaha mention a mas'ala, and that is, at which point exactly do we start counting the 24 hours or the 72 hours? At which point exactly? So many of the fuqaha, even outside the madhab, along with the madhab, the shaykh has a different opinion. I'm going to indicate to the shaykh's opinion, but in a number of masail in this chapter and maybe a few others, I'm going to teach it on the madhab. I'm going to teach it on the madhab, and sometimes I'll indicate to the shaykh's opinion, Unless, because the shaykh phrases things in a manner that has both opinions can fill into it. And in other books, many times in other books, the shaykh mentions his own opinion clearly. So in some chapters I will teach it on the madhab, because then if we teach different things, then in the future books, when we teach books that are more on the mu'tamad, then it's not confusing. So we said, when does the masah start? So the fuqaha say a person performs his wudu and where he washes his feet. We're going to mention that just now. He wears his footgear. Then when does his timing start? Does it start from the moment he puts on the footgear? The answer is no. It starts from the madhab is that it starts from the first time he's broken his wudu. After performing wudu and he's put on his footgear, then the first time that he breaks his wudu, from that time 24 hours starts counting. So if he puts on his khuffain, his footgear, after Salatul Fajr, but his wudu only broke at 12 p.m., he has 24 hours or 72 hours from 12 p.m. Right? We'll indicate the shaykh's opinion, and that's the riwayah thaniya in the madhab, is that the time starts from your first wiping. Meaning your first, not mustahab wiping. Mustahab wiping meaning when you are in the state of wudu and you put on your footgear, if you haven't broken your wudu and you wanted to refresh your wudu, perform a wudu on wudu. We'll mention that perhaps, in fact, maybe in another book, the actual sunnah time of wudu on a wudu. And a person in that sunnah wudu wiped on his khuffain, the time does not start. Because he's still in the state of wudu. If he took his khuffain off that he wiped on, his wudu would not be broken, because the wudu when he washed his feet, that one there is still intact. So once he breaks his wudu, so now example 12 p.m. Then he performs wudu for Salatul Dhuhr at 1 p.m. At that 1 p.m. he wipes over his feet, the time will start there. According to the Shaykh in the riwayah thaniya. There's a few differences between the times of the two. There's a few differences, but we won't mention it because of time. But that's a difference. So the madhab says the first time a person's wudu breaks, and it just depends on how a person or how the fuqaha analyze the dalil. Both of them would take from the same dalil. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying yamsah al-muqim yawman wa layla, that a resident will wipe. So the madhab looks at this word and says the first possible wiping, the first chance for this wajib wiping to start. We start the timing at that time. And the riwayah thaniya will look at it and saying yamsah, he wipes. So we look at the actual wiping, the actual time of wiping. But the dalil is one. It's how the fuqaha extract from the dalil. It's how they analyze the dalil. Okay. So then when the time is over, then here after the time, then you cannot wipe on the khuf anymore. You cannot wipe on the khuf or on the imama or on the khimar, etc. You cannot wipe on it once the time is ended. So the masah, the aspect of wiping over, that is agreed upon that it's over. But does the wudu break? So here, according to the shaykh, the wudu doesn't break. He says that wudu and the masah are not interlinked. They're not interlinked. The wudu is not broken, but your aspect of masah is broken. So your aspect of masah, you cannot wipe on it after, but your wudu is still intact. The madhab is that your wudu also breaks. Because the time of wiping or the aspect of validity of wiping ends. So when the validity of wiping ends, it's as if your feet have now not been washed. It's as if now your feet, the tahara of it has lifted because the time of validity of the masah is over. And then it rendered your entire body, it lifted the tahara of your entire body, your entire wudu. And that links to another mas'ala, but I may not mention it because of time. Because what I mean by saying it raised the tahara of your entire body, of all your wudu body parts, that has a mas'ala. But so the madhab says that it then removes the tahara of your entire body part, and therefore your entire wudu body parts, therefore your entire body, and therefore you need to refresh your entire wudu. You need to refresh your entire wudu. So that's a difference there between the shaykh and the madhab, between the shaykh and the madhab. And we'll mention here what things break this wiping. So this wudu of wiping breaks with the normal things that break wudu, which is the next chapter, along with the time ending. That's on the madhab, the wudu breaks. The shaykh's opinion is that the wudu doesn't break. That's one thing, okay? What else breaks the mash? We said the time ending. A normal thing that breaks wudu, the time ending, and also, according to the madhab, if any part of the body part that you've wiped on, if skin shows, if any part of the skin shows, then that breaks the wiping. That breaks the wiping, which therefore breaks your wudu. It breaks the wiping and therefore breaks your wudu. The shaykh says, and this is also the riwayah thani in the madhab, the opinion of many fuqaha, including Ibn Taymiyyah, that in this case, the wudu does not break. The wudu does not break. Your wudu stays intact if a portion of the part you wiped over is now visible. Just like how if you did mash on your hair and then you shaved your hair, you removed your hair, your wudu will still be intact. The madhab doesn't go with that. They say that because the mash is your original thing. The mash is your original thing. So when you remove it, you're not removing a substitute. So therefore your wudu is still intact if you removed your hair. They say it's mustahab to renew the wudu, but it doesn't break your wudu. But for your khuf, or for your imama, or for your khimar, then there it is a substitute for what you should actually be washing. For what you actually should be washing or wiping. Therefore, if that now is removed, then your tahara breaks. So those things break the mash on the khuf. Our next mas'ala, the shaykh mentions a stipulation or the stipulation of wiping over, in fact, all types of things that you can wipe on. All types. That is according to the madhab. But the way he phrases it, he's making an exception of the jabira. He's making an exception of the jabira, which is also a very strong opinion of many fuqaha in the madhab, actually. The exception of the jabira to the stipulation we're going to mention just now, and also an exception of a number of fuqaha also for their imama, for a stipulation of wiping. Not of what you can wipe on, of wiping that we're going to mention just now. But before we go to that one, let's mention the stipulations of this footgear, that you can wipe on or not wipe on. So the fuqaha say that when the ahadith that mention the word khuf, there are other ahadith that mention the word tasakhin. So these ahadith indicate that you wipe on a khuf. And then we have narrations from the Sahaba, around 9 of the Sahaba. Many of the Sahaba, Bilal radiallahu anhu, Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, a number of Sahaba that they wiped over what is termed as jawrabain. So jawrabain is not, even though the term is used today, the term for socks that people generally wear, the nylon, cotton socks, is called jawrabain. People refer to it in Arabic as jawrabain. But that which is in the narrations of the Sahaba, that they wiped over jawrabain, that is not the jawrabain that we wear today. It is not the jawrabain that we wear today. So those ahadith are not those narrations from the Sahaba are not direct proof of wiping over socks that we wear today. It's not direct proof, but it does show something further, and that is that the Sahaba wiped on things that went over the foot. They wiped on things that went over the foot, even if they were not khuf, even if they were not a khuf. A khuf is like a leather sock. Therefore, the fuqaha term a jawrab as anything that is worn on the foot that is not made from skin. So it's not made from leather. It's not from leather. It's of another material. So they say anything over the foot, whatever it is made of, if it fulfills the stipulation of a thing you can wipe on, if it's worn on the foot, then you can wipe on this thing. So we don't limit it to the khuf that the word khuf and the khuf that was found in the time of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. Because the way the Sahaba applied the texts indicates to an expansion of the meaning, because there's no direct meaning to say that the khuf that's mentioned in the ahadith is an XYZ khuf. So since there's no dalil to explain it from Sharia, you go to step 2. Step 2 is in the Arabic language. We look at the Arabic language. Step 3 is when there's no Arabic, the Arabic language doesn't specify something, we go to urf. We go to urf. So like mu'ala for wudu, we said you go to urf. Because there's no explanation of muwala in the Sharia, and then according to those who say urf, they say also in the language there isn't an explanation of muwala. Others actually say there isn't in the language, but that's another technical mas'ala connected to something else in usul. But anyway, to go back to our mas'ala, so therefore you can wipe over what is worn over the foot if it has 4 or 5 stipulations. We'll mention them we'll count them as we mention them. So number 1, but 1 or 2 I'll just join them in 2 into 1, because essentially they are the same. Number 1, the fuqaha say it must be something worn on the foot. It must be something mubah. It must be something mubah. It is not something stolen or usurped, something like that. It is something permissible for a person to make use of. It's permissible for him to make use of. Number 2, it is something that is tahir. It is something that is tahir. Therefore, it is not impure. It is not from skin of an impure animal. It is not from skin from an impure animal, for example. Or it is not made of silk for males, or even gold and silver for males or females. Males for sure. Females, if it's not part of the jewelry, then they should not be wearing. They are not allowed to wear it on their feet, so you cannot wipe on this thing, on this footgear. So it must be mubah. It must be tahir. Mubah, those 2 haram examples I gave of silk, and that also connects to mubah actually, not tahir, right? So tahir we mentioned. Number 3, it must be yathbutu binafsihi. They say it must be something that can it itself stay. It stays on the foot. It does not need to be tied with something not connected to the khuf to connect to the foot, to keep it to stay on the foot. They say the only thing that you could wear on this footgear, if it will not stay on the foot itself, the only thing you can wear to keep it on the foot itself is like shoes or sandals. That's the only thing. But if you need something else, you need to tie it with a string or something, then that you would not be allowed to wipe on, because it will not count as a khuf. Number 4 is the very important one, and that is no part of the body part, not of the body part, but of the foot. Because this stipulation is not found in the khimar and the imama and the jabira, but of the foot. No part of the foot that you'd wash is visible. No part of the foot that you have to wash is visible. That means 3 things, or 4 things even. Number 1, the size of this footgear covers the whole from the tip of the toe to just above the ankles. That is number 1. Number 2, they say that it must not have any holes in it. It must cover the whole thing. It must cover the whole part of the body, part of the foot that you have to wash. Number 3, it must not be see-through. So the whole footgear, it must not be see-through. Sometimes you get socks that you can see through just below, like the ankle. You can see through it. That you are not allowed to wipe on. Because you can see the foot, you can see the part that has to be washed. So you cannot wipe over it. It has to be covered. So when the fuqaha say it must be thick, they mean this. They mean that you cannot see the skin beneath this footgear. If you can see the skin beneath it, it is not thick. And therefore they say that water going through this or water not going through the footgear, that is not a stipulation. So some of the fuqaha outside the madhab say it must be thick, but thick meaning water does not penetrate. The Hanbali fuqaha specify that water not penetrating is not a stipulation. Rather, when they say thick, it means the skin color underneath. The skin color underneath is not visible. You must not be able to see what color is the person's skin from this footgear that he is wearing. Then number 5 is that a person is able to walk in this footgear. Able to walk in it meaning, in general, if he wears this, he's able to walk. So they don't specify where. In fact, they specify that you can walk anywhere, whether it's in the house, whether it's in the mosque, whether it's in the carpets, whether it's on the road, the tar, it doesn't matter. As long as you can walk and the thing does not tear or break apart. It does not tear or break apart. So therefore, if you can walk in the house with it, permissible. If you can walk on a carpet with this thing, this stipulation is fulfilled. It doesn't mean that you must walk on the tar road, etc. And they also say they do not specify a distance. They say if you can generally walk in it. Meaning some types of footgear, you cannot walk in it. You cannot walk in it. If a person were to tie like a carton on his foot, he probably cannot walk in it. Or you get shoes that have wheels underneath. Or when like people who ice skate, those shoes that they wear, those you cannot walk with them. Those things you cannot wipe over. But general footgear that you can walk in it and fulfills the other stipulations, those things you can wipe over. You can wipe over. So you can wipe over a boot, you can wipe over socks, cotton socks that fulfill the stipulations, etc. All of that is permissible according to the madhab. All of that is permissible according to the madhab. You have to analyze this footgear according to the 5 stipulations. According to the 5 stipulations that I mentioned. The Shaykh, he's with the opinion of Ibn Taymiyyah alayhi rahmatullah with regards to if you can see parts of the foot from or through the footgear because there's holes. He says that is permissible. And that is permissible because he says the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, they were poor. Their socks would most likely, their leather socks or the socks, whatever they were wearing on their feet, would most likely have had holes in them. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam did not prohibit them or say to them, you cannot wipe on the socks, on their footgear. So therefore, he says that holes in the sock, general holes that you'd have, whether they're big or small, but not like really big holes or like really properly torn, etc., you can still wear them and walk in them, etc., that you can wipe over still. And Shaykh Taqiyuddin alayhi rahmatullah, he says for a need, if the khuf is beneath the ankle, so there's part of the foot that you have to wash. There's part of the foot that you have to wash. He says you're allowed to wipe on that footgear if there's a need. So sometimes a person could be in a need. He shouldn't just do this, but sometimes in really difficult situations, sometimes a person wears ankle socks, and for example they are traveling, or it's very difficult to do a proper wudu or to wash the feet, or they didn't get a chance to wear proper socks that they can wipe on before traveling on the plane or whatever, then there's scope to apply this in real need, as the Shaykh says, when there's an actual need, when there's actual difficulty, then perhaps the scope to do this. Then the second last mas'ala with regards to wiping over khuffain is that the Shaykh says that with the stipulation that a person wore this footgear, I'm going to call it khuffain now, we know what is meant by khuffain, that a person wore this khuffain, whatever it may be, the footgear is, whether it be shoes or boots or socks or leather socks, etc. Whatever a person wore this, in fact, to go back to that mas'ala, the fuqaha mentioned even if the thing is made of glass or wood or something, if it fulfills the stipulation, there's 5 stipulations, you can wipe on it. They're pointing out that the point is the stipulations. The point is the stipulations that fulfills a khuf. The stipulations make us understand. That is what is found in a khuf, those things. So it doesn't have to specifically be a khuf, it has to be the things found in a khuf that make a footgear a khuf. Hence they mention like glass, etc. If they fulfill the stipulations, you can wipe on it. So therefore, here they say, the Shaykh says the stipulation is that a person has to have performed a full tahara where he washed his feet and then he wore the khuffain. So that means that a person completed his entire wudu and then wore the khuffain, the footgear. If he did wudu until his first foot, he washed his right foot or his left foot, he washed one of them first. The sunnah is the right foot, as we mentioned previously. He washed his right foot, then he put on footgear, then he washed his left foot, and he put on the other one. Then it will not be permissible for him to wipe on what? It will not be permissible for him to wipe on the right foot. He'd have to take it off. The left foot, he wore it on complete tahara. But the right foot, he didn't. So he'd have to take the right foot off and put it on after he had washed his left foot. The left foot is okay because it was after complete tahara. So that is the point though. That it must be a complete tahara. And tahara with water. So not tayammum, tahara with water. Even if a person, there's some masail, in some situations where a person does wudu and for some body parts they do tayammum, we'll mention it now. Or he does masih on his jabira, that still counts. He can then still wipe over those khuffain, but he has to do a complete tahara. He has to do a complete tahara. And then the wiping over the khuffain, it is only the khuffain as well as the imama as well as the khimar. It is all only permissible, the Shaykh says, in minor impurity. In minor impurity. So when a person has to perform a ghusl, a wajib ghusl, or a sunnah ghusl, to complete the ghusl, he has to wash the feet. He has to wash the feet and remove the khuffain, or remove the imama and remove the khimar. So this stipulation of putting this thing you can wipe on in tahara, the fuqaha say it's for all four things. It's for all four things. But as I said just now, the jabira is a lot of khilaf, and also the imam. Some of the fuqaha do not stipulate it at all, and Shaykh Taqiyuddin says actually the general trend, a person would be wearing an imam and he could wear it at any time. And then he says that if a person lifted it up to do masih of his head, because he has to do first of the complete wudu without masih, and therefore he lifted it from his head and he put it on after doing the masih, then he washed his feet. He says that's okay. You can do in your next wudu, you can wipe over their imamah. You can wipe over their imamah. Then, in fact, before we go to jabira, let's just mention how to wipe over the imamah, since we mentioned, in fact we'll do it at the end, we'll mention it at the end if I don't forget, when the Shaykh mentions the method of doing masih over the khuffain and the jabira. So then the Shaykh mentions the evidence for this, that Anas radiallahu anhu narrates that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that if one of you performs wudu and wears his khuffain, then he can wipe over them, فَلْيَمْسَحْ عَلَيْهِمَا وَلْيُصَلِّ فِيهِمَا, and then he can pray in them as well. He doesn't need to take them off. He can perform wudu and wipe on them and also pray in them. وَلَا يَخْلَعْهُمَا إِنْ شَاءَ إِلَّا مِنْ جَنَابَ, and if he wants to not remove them, he can continue not removing them. Obviously a day and a night or 3 days, unless he's in a state of major impurity. Unless he's in a state of major impurity. This hadith is narrated by Hakim, and Hakim authenticated it. Then the next mas'ala, the Shaykh goes to the jabira. So the jabira, the fuqaha, many of them in fact say that it does not need to be worn on tahara. They say it does not need to be worn on tahara. The reason for that is because you can get an injury at any time, or a wound at any time, and therefore immediately you may need to put a plaster on it or a bandage or whatever it may be. You may not be able to get a chance to perform wudu and then put it on. So that is a very strong opinion. Therefore we're going to build the masail on that opinion. Because if we're going to the opinion of it must be in tahara, then there's a few extra fiqh. There's a few extra masail that to include. We'll do that inshallah in another book when we teach it on the madhab. So the Shaykh says, let's first go, what is a jabira? What is a jabira? A jabira is something when a person wears, as the Shaykh is going to say, if a person has a broken bone, or a person has an injury, then a person wears a cast, or a person wears a plaster, or a bandage, or a person even wraps tissue on the body part. Maybe there's no plaster or something, so he's got a bleeding thumb or something, so he wraps tissue on it so it stops bleeding. He doesn't have a plaster or something. Or a person has an injury, so you get these like heat patches, for example, on this body part, and it goes on the body part to heal the body part. Then, if a person can remove this thing, and there'd be no harm, or it will not prolong the healing process, he can just remove it and wash the body part, then he does that. But the moment he needs to keep it on, or removing it will cause prolonging of the healing process, or it will get him more injured, or water cannot touch this body part, etc., then here he's allowed to wipe on this jabira. We're going to call it a jabira. It includes all of that, as well as if a person has some medicine on his body part of wudu, or ghusl. We said that for hadath, I mentioned the khuffain, the imam and the khimar. The jabira, just like in a travel where a person intends sin, a person travels for sin, you can do masih on the jabira. As well here in hadathun akbar, you can do masih on the jabira. So any part of the body that a person has this jabira on it, or connected to the jabira is medicine or ointment, something like that on the body part, on the injury or the wound, then that ointment takes the rule of a jabira. So it would mean that if it has a layer that water cannot penetrate, then there the rules of the jabira come. And if it does not have a layer, water can penetrate it, then it can be washed if there's no harm. If there is harm, then from here the steps of the jabira come through. Okay? And a third situation is where a person does not have a jabira on his injury or his wound, and also he does not have ointment or medicine on the injury or the wound. The wound is open. Then here, we're going to mention the rule if I don't forget. So the Shaykh says, if a person has, إِنْ كَانَ عَلَى أَعْضَاءِ وُضُوئِهِ جَبِرَةٌ عَلَى كَسْرٍ. The Shaykh says, if a person has on his body parts of wudu, because the Shaykh is referring to wudu, at least in this sentence, then he has a jabira on the broken bone or body part, or he has medicine or ointment on an injury or a wound, and وَيَضُرُّهُ الْغَسْلِ, and washing it, this is what I mentioned first, washing it would harm him or prolong the healing process, anything like that, then here we can apply the rules of the jabira. A person may have like not a cast, but you have like an injury in your wrist or something, then you wear it's like a material thing that basically, the word in Arabic is like a mashed, is where it keeps the bone like in place. I'm forgetting the term now for it, but that kind of thing, you can just remove it. You can just remove it, pull it off, if it doesn't harm. If it harms, if you need it on to keep the bone in place, it's like not a fracture, but your bone is knocked out of place or something, then in that case it takes the rule of a jabira. But if you just want something else, it's just to keep your bone in place or whatever, and you can remove it without harm, then you have to wash. The same thing with a jabira, the same thing with anything. With the plaster, if you have a plaster on and removing it, there's no difficulty in it for the wound, then you remove it to wash. Otherwise, then the rules of a jabira come. So the Shaykh says, يَضُرُّهُ الْغَسْل, that the ghasl, the washing, harms the thing, the wound or the broken bone or whatever it is. مَسَحَهُ بِالْمَاءِ فِي الْحَدَثِ الْأَكْبَرِ وَالْأَصْغَرِ حَتَّى يَبْرَى. Then a person in this case can wipe over this wound or this cast or this ointment in hadathun akbar and asghar. So asghar and akbar, and until when? Until he's cured. Then when he is cured, then our masail earlier that we mentioned, either the wudu breaks immediately, the masih breaks, right? There's no difference of opinion there. But does the wudu break? The madhab, yes. The Shaykh, no. The Shaykh says, no, the masih breaks, not the wudu. So the Shaykh says, masahahu bil ma'i. So we mentioned you can do it in the major and minor impurity, and we mentioned the time. And also I said the Shaykh did not indicate that you wear it on tahara. And that's the riwayah thaniya, and this is the opinion of many of the fuqaha of the madhab. That's why we're building on it, because of the strength of the riwayah. Then the Shaykh says, masahahu bil ma. A person who takes his wet hand and he wipes over this cast. Now, when it comes to this cast, a person has a cast. The cast, we're going to call the wound a haja. It's a need. Okay? No, it's a wound. We have the wound or the broken bone. Then we have beyond the wound or the broken bone or the injury, we have a portion of the wound or the injury, etc., that this plaster or this cast will be on, and that body part is not injured. So if you have a plaster, maybe you have a cut, then you put a plaster is long. The middle of the plaster maybe, that will be on the wound, that will be on the cut. But then you have beyond that may wrap, let's say it's on your finger, it will wrap around your finger. There's the rest, let's say that you have the cut on the front of your finger. Behind your finger, that can be washed. There's no pain on it, there's no cut on it. But the plaster goes around it. Or you have a cast, let's say on your wrist. Your wrist is broken. But the cast is not only to the length of the wrist, rather it is beyond a part of your hand, maybe a part of your arm as well. All of that, it's called, what do they call it? It's called, I'm forgetting the term in the books of fiqh, but basically that is the place of haja. It is the place of haja. It is that this jabira, it goes on the injury and around it, just around it, it's needed to go on that part that is not injured of the body, so that the jabira can stay in place. Like a plaster, you have to wrap it around your finger, or it's beyond the wound or the cut, so that the plaster can stay in place. Or the jabira, you do not get a cast, maybe a cast that would not just be on your wrist, it has to be but beyond the wrist, from the front and back, from the up and down, so that it stays in place. All of that is called the mahallul haja, or the place of haja. And that means that it's the place that you can wipe over it. You can wipe over that. So it's your wound and beyond that. But beyond that, to what extent? The part around it that this jabira needs to keep it in place. So if you have a broken wrist, but the cast is right until your elbow, then you'd say until a portion just beyond the wrist, towards your elbow, that would be the mahallul haja. Beyond that is not actually mahallul haja. It's not mahallul haja, okay? So even though it's needed to there, but you say the part plus minus near it, around it, so not very far around it. Then if you have this jabira, it is beyond the mahallul haja. It is beyond the mahallul haja. Therefore, can it be wiped? It cannot be wiped, because underneath it is part of the skin, part of the body that is water can touch. There's no fear at all of water touching the water touching the skin. It is a body part that is no injury, no cut, nothing. So therefore that part, how do we deal with it? Or remember the third situation I said, that if you have an open wound, therefore water, you cannot wash it. Then what do you do there? So let's go with this situation first. In that case, if you cannot wash it, you wipe it. You take a wet hand, you wipe it, that will suffice. If you cannot wipe it, then we are in the same situation now as this jabira that is beyond the mahallul haja. The fuqaha say that you do tayammum. You do tayammum for that part. You do tayammum with the intention of that body part, or that part of the body part. That part of the body part that is covered with the jabira, but it is not injured. And it is beyond the mahallul haja. Or a person, he has, let's say, a plaster or something stuck on him. He can't get it out and he's healed. But he needs to wash because he's healed. He can't get it out. Oh, he's got a cast on. He's not able to remove it. He needs to go to the doctor to remove it. But he knows he's healed. He knows he's healed underneath. So here he has to wash. So then what do you do here in this case? You do tayammum. So what would happen with the tayammum is that a person, the fuqaha, remember we mentioned tartib, being a stipulation in wudu, a sequence, you have to do in a specific order. So the fuqaha say, the mashhur, but the riwayah thaniya is very strong. The riwayah thaniya again here is very strong. But the mashhur of the madhab is that you wash your body parts, you wash what you can, you wash your body parts that have no injury. Let's say you have the jabira on your arm. They say you wash your face, nose and mouth, face. Then you come, let's say it's on your left arm, so you wash your right arm. Then you come to your left arm. Here you have to do tayammum. Right? So here you have to do tayammum. So therefore, if you did mash of your head, then the mash would not count, because you're not done with your arm. So you have to do the tayammum at the place where the limb would have been washed. That is because of tartib. But on the body, so let's say it's your left arm. You can do left or right first, right? I just mentioned it by way because the sunnah is to do right first, then left. But you could have done tayammum and your left arm first, then washed your right. It's permissible. But let's say you have this jabira on your left arm, but it is not covering the entire arm, but it is covering beyond the mahallul haja. So it's beyond the wound and beyond, just around it, the sides around it that is needed to keep the jabira in place. So you have this wound, a portion of it is open. So here, not this wound, this body part, this limb. So here you'd have 3 types of tahara. So you'd wash the part that is got no jabira on it and there's no injury on it. You'd wash it. The jabira you do mash. Mash for where? Mash for the part, for the mahallul haja, the whole thing, the wound and the part around it, excluding the extra. For the extra you do tayammum. The fuqaha say in that body part you do not have to have sequence. You do not need to wash first, then wipe, and then tayammum. You can do any one first. You can do anything first. You can do anything first. And if you were to have the jabira on, let's say it is on, and there is no wound underneath. It is not underneath. You just have it on, you can't take it off. Or you have some ointment, or you have something sticky on your body part that you cannot remove. You're struggling to remove. And it prevents water from going on your body. Then here, you do wudu and tayammum in any order. So you wash, let's say your left arm again, you'd wash your left arm, then do tayammum. Or tayammum, then wash the rest of your left arm. So you do two types of tahara there. You do two types of tahara for that body part. The riwayah thaniya that is very strong, it says that when there's wudu and tayammum, when there's washing and tayammum in one, then you can do tayammum before or after. So you can do tayammum before or after with the intention of that body part. And then when you do wudu, then your washing is done in the sequence. Your washing is done in the sequence. You leave that body part out because you're going to do tayammum for it after, or you've just done it before, So that is what regards to the jabira. There's one more mas'ala. That when we say that the jabira is beyond the mahallul haja, in theory the fuqaha say first a person has to remove at least this extra part beyond the mahallul haja. He has to remove it, if that is possible. If not possible, then he goes to the next step of tayammum. So that's with regards to that mas'ala. Then the final mas'ala is the method of wiping over the khuffain and also the jabira. So let's start with the jabira because that is quite simple. The Shaykh says, وَأَمَّا الْجَبِيرَ فَيَمْسَحُ عَلَى جَمِيعِهَا. As for the jabira, then you wipe over the entire jabira. You wipe over the entire jabira. So that is in wudu. If it is on the body part and beyond the body part that you're going to wash, then here you only wash until the end of the body part that you would have. Then here in wudu you only wipe until the end of the body part that you would have washed if there was no jabira. So if it ends, if the cast is, let's say, from the middle of your between your elbow and your wrist, and it goes beyond towards your shoulder, you'd end the wiping at your elbow. For ghusl, you have to do the whole body. So therefore, you would wipe beyond until where the jabira ends. Right? And we said when you got to do tayammum or washing, tayammum and masah, then you don't do masah over the part that is beyond the mahallul haja. You don't do that because you're going to do tayammum for that. So you don't wipe it. Right? That is for the jabira. And that is one of the differences between a jabira and the other things you wipe on. Because here the khuffain, the method of wiping over the khuffain, the fuqaha say, the Shaykh says, وَصِفَةُ مَسْحِ الْخُفَّيْنِ أَنْ يَمْسَحَ أَكْثَرَ ظَاهِرِهِمَا. The Shaykh says that here for the khuffain, you wipe most, so not all, most of the upper side. So not your sole of your foot, the upper side of your foot. So not the sole of your foot that touches the ground when you walk, the upper part. So you wipe most of the upper part of your foot. So the method of doing so, the fuqaha say that you put your fingertips on the tips of your toes. Right hand on the right foot, left hand on the left foot, and you wipe from the toes towards above the ankle. So just as you're going into the shin, where basically the part you're going to wash, you wipe over it. And they say you spread your fingers a bit. By doing that, you'd cover the most of the upper part of the foot, because you spread your fingers a bit, because that's what comes in some ahadith or also some narrations from the Sahaba and Tabi'in as well. Hassan al-Basri rahmatullahi alayhi, Umar radiyallahu anhu, that he wipe over his khuffain and it would look like the stripes on it. Also, if I'm not mistaken, there's some narrations marfu' for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam that he'd wipe on his khuffain or his footgear and it would look like the stripes, because you spread your fingers and you wipe from your toe towards to just the beginning of the shin, just beyond the ankles, because that's the part you'd wash. So that's the part you wipe. And the fuqaha say in any way, any manner that you wipe, it would count. But what I mentioned is sunnah. And Mughira ibn Shu'bah, when he says that I wanted to remove the khuffain of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, so he told me da'huma, he said leave them because I put them on in the state of tahara. Mughira ibn Shu'bah says that then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam performed wudu فَمَسَحَ عَلَيْهِمَا, then he wiped on them. Therefore from there the fuqaha say that it indicates that the khuffain The foot gear, you wipe at the same time. You wipe at the same time. And if you were to not be able to wipe at the same time, then here you give preference to the right foot, like how we mentioned for the ear. So you wipe at the same time. That would be the sunnah. That would be the sunnah. And the fuqaha say that it is makruh to wash the foot, to wash the foot gear. But would it count if you washed? Because we said that there's 4 levels and ghusl is beyond masih. The fuqaha say the rule will be like the head. So the head, it would not count according to the mashhur if you washed it. You have to, if it's wet or washed, you have to pass your hands over because you have to do a wiping. So the same with the foot gear. It can be washed, but then you have to wipe. You have to wipe in some manner. You have to wipe in some manner. It will be makruh to wash it, and also makruh to do more than one wiping, because the qaida is, we mentioned it before, that the wiping of the body parts is done once. So if you did more than one wiping, it would be makruh. And the fuqaha say that it is not sunnah to wipe the bottom of the feet or the back of by your heels. It is not sunnah to wipe that part. And if you were to only wipe one of those or both parts other than the top of the foot, then it would not count. You have to wipe the top. And that is most of it. And I think that we covered most of the masail there. Time is short, otherwise we would have mentioned the manner of wiping over the imamah and the khimar. But next time, inshallah, we end there. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to teach us that which benefits us and benefit us with that which He teaches us. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.